Hello, this is Alexander, Grandomastery founder. A few colleagues of ours requested a detailed explanation on how Grandomastery works. Well, it's quite simple, considering that we have only two main buttons. These are random, that just generates a particular activity from all the 31 types of activities. For now, there are 31 types of activities. Before there were certainly fewer, but now, yes, and we are, well, creating new and new activities. And certainly we have a cycle as well, which walks you through a cycle of activities. And then you can repeat this cycle. Well, we're not going to waste our time on going through the cycle, considering that now there are 31 activities, and which means it's quite a lot. And as you see, the main disadvantage, the main criticism is that the tasks are loaded not fast enough. But sometimes in a particular classroom environment, it's not such a big deal because anyways, we need to move from one to another, and especially if we use a projector or something quite similar, maybe we can broadcast it on a big screen, on smart TV and so on. It's sort of okay. So, as for the premium button, it allows you to get some additional features. For example, there is an app, official Grandomastery app, there are some printables and so on. So a lot of additional materials and certainly, richer content which is updated faster and so on. So as for premium, it gives you essentially the access to all these features. While on the other hand, without any registration, without logging in, you can easily use different activities using just, random and cycle button. As you have seen, we've just walked you through the cycle of activities, and if you want to start again, you can just press this button, or rather this, doesn't matter. It generates yet another cycle. Make sure that the cookies are switched on for better experience. And indeed, you can just go through the cycle again. As for random button, it generates different activities, sometimes repetitively, meaning that there could be, for example, question, yet, maybe at some point there will be yet another random question, and so on. So here, as for random button, it uses weights. A weight is, in a way, a coefficient which, for example, allows you to set the weights, set the frequency. I would say that it's a type of frequency with which a certain task is generated. So, for example, the most popular tasks seem to be questions, according to some recent polls that we've had among the colleagues. They really like random questions. Besides, there are thousands of them, so it makes sense considering that this category is quite frequently updated. Well, sometimes tongue twisters, although, as well, but generally these are questions, these are random articles as well, so these are, I suppose, really popular categories of tasks. At some point, quite soon probably, we are going to add the difficulty tags, because, for example, random question is pretty easy, and I suppose even B2 or B1 students can respond to these without any troubles, considering that there are some hints, but there are some more complicated tasks, such as abstractions. As for abstractions, it requires, correspondingly abstract reasoning and some advanced linguistic skills. Well, as they say, it's sometimes quite difficult to respond to these tasks using the mother tongue, although, yes, but as for target language, here you see you have some explanations, you have, of course, dictionary entries, which should help you with this task. But anyways, the reason why the tasks are randomized is that it should be surprising, it should be a novel for both a student or the trainee and certainly the trainer or the host of this project. So this is the point. And of course, if we want to generate a story, then we could start, for example, with shopping, and we could just, tell others a story Usually when I go shopping, I cannot shop for luxurious items because, well, actually I don't have that much money. And, I suppose that if I, for example, had the possibility to just do whatever I want, I would certainly be a poet. I would write some poetry, and it would be so nice to actually work on favorite things such as poems, and at the same time to be able to purchase some luxury. But alas, well, it's about human race, I believe. It's about our limitations, restrictions, social agenda that just don't allow us to do what we want sometimes. Yes, we have to live as in the old pagan world where people had to, well, earn for their living by doing certain things, by maybe preserving some foods, etc., in order to live yet another year, to survive during yet another winter. And it's quite different, although they say, from our modern lifestyle, considering that we can go to cafes and we can even order food from cafes, so we don't have to harvest things and then, probably depend on the yield, but still, all those elements related to poetry and, of course, mythology, well, it makes the world so different from those mythological creatures and mythological realms, when it's possible to just choose an element in which one can live. For example, I probably would choose the sea. I would choose a marine theme because, all those beautiful myths about mermaids are just so lovely. Although, when we think of poetry, it's about elegy on the other hand. We think of something maybe autumnal and something that is related to, well, the decrease in the splendor of the nature. And unfortunately, I'm quite bad at weaponry related to poetry. I'm quite bad at the literary tools related to this. And they say that we need to create a particular model for the poem first, yes, a particular maybe framework, and then create poems. I don't know, this is what I've heard. Not sure if it's true. Although it may look a bit uniformy, meaning that, especially if we take Eastern poetry, such as hokku, etc., we may feel as if those kimono people, those who were at the same time practicing martial arts, were creating this. There is some framework within it which makes it a bit repetitive, this Eastern style. And usually, yes, it's about some full moon, or it's about some nature, maybe some animal somewhere in the forest, something quite repetitive and expected on the other hand. Well, at the same time, it may make sense nowadays, considering that we're still affected by cycles, by nature, and they even say that shopping habits, they may be somehow related to different activities, planetary activities, or even with the tides, with the full moon, with eclipse, etc., which is quite unusual. So we've just done this story cycle, which was certainly not the best we can, and obviously we have heard so many times when students would just nail this activity. It was just perfect, but well, why not? Also, you see there is this invulnerability function, which means we can actually load a spectrogram, and the thing is, we shouldn't make any pauses while we're doing this, otherwise it may be a game over. This is an invulnerability mode, but if we switch to, for example, ultraviolence, if we make a pause, then it may lead to a game over dialogue. Because pauses are not that good for our cohesion, for our coherence, and this is why we have to start over and do it over and over again. And this is related to some other types of activities. Also, it's quite useful to add some notes here if it's necessary. For example, when it comes to random image description, when students have to learn certain terms, they can make use of notes, and of course they can respond to some questions here that are usually generated in relation to the image. Well, in general, this is all about the main functions of Grandomastery. We've learned that we have random and cycle functions. Cycle is about a cycle of activities, and random just generates a certain task, and we may never predict which exactly task it may be, whether it's a question or whatnot. At least the most frequent and the most popular tasks are usually created using random. And of course, as for the cycle, it's quite suitable for a particular class, maybe a conversation club or something, when we want students to go through a full list of activities, which are available here in task categories. We have the structure and we have the description, and of course links may eventually refer to a particular task, whether it's tongue twister, whether it's a simile or question or whatever. So basically the main point in Grandomastery is that there are no incorrect answers, because some tasks, they even don't make any sense. For example, giving can be deceiving. It's a proverb like other proverbs here, which are generated using Markov chains. It means that they are composed of different proverbs, and yet you have to explain it somehow. You have to explain using certain elements of synectics especially, and by association you can probably check who Koestler was, Arthur Koestler, and what by association is. Although we have some definitions here in the categories, we have short glossary here, who Grandomaster is, who Grandominister is, usually an administrator, host, yes, and the Grandomaster is actually any person who tries to work on this. Grandominister can be a Grandomaster at the same time. And by association, we have a definition here when we need to apply humor, maybe art or science, in order to give certain explanations, etc. So basically this is it, and if you have any other questions, please let me know. Thank you very much for your attention.